Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of our 2019 LIBERO TV season. If you haven't already, please sign in on the right-hand YouTube panel so you can say hello in the chat today. And if you have any problems commenting, please call our main phone line number on 0733563631, and we can have someone help you, guide you through with that. So today we have Carolyn ready on the chat to answer any of your questions. So
hi everyone.
Good morning, Carolyn. So in this episode, we're going to look at ways to use ODBC as a tool to directly import data into Excel. You probably often use crystal reports and use that to export to an Excel file or CSV file, but it's also possible to not only export but also refresh data directly in Excel. So we're going to have a look at that today. The specific things we're going to look at is using the built-in ODBC connector in Excel. So that's probably going to look pretty similar to the one that I have here, but even if you have a different version of Microsoft Excel, there will still be an ODBC connector that you can use. So I'll be showing you some of that today. And with that, you can query the LIBERO SQL tables very similar way that you would normally do with just your normal Crystal or other tools. So we'll also go in a little bit about building graphs and charts or tables and pulling that data directly in from your ODBC connection. We'll also have a quick look at data filtering, validation, sorting, and even removing duplicates. And also, finally, I'll show you how you can refresh the data directly in your Excel file, and you can either refresh on demand or refresh whenever you open the file. So just with a little bit of basic information, when you're using ODBC in general, to set it up, you'll normally require administrator rights on your computer. So there is an article on the LIBERO Exchange which will tell you exactly how to set up an ODBC connection and exactly what you might need to do to configure it. But we'll have a quick look at an existing connection in a moment. Just so you know, that article has a link to the driver, which is on the FTP site, and also has some information about what you would put in your ODBC connection setup. If you already have one for Crystal Reports, you don't need to create a new one for Excel. You can just use your existing one. So we'll just have a quick look now. Just here, if you have the correct permissions, you would put in a ODBC connection, and one could be added here. Just bringing that over here, using the InterSystems ODBC 35. But I've already created one earlier, and I'll just quickly open that just to display. This is the normal ODBC setup. So I have the name, description, the host, which I'm using the demo site, the port, and just one little point here. We do recommend now that you use your own password and credentials rather than a generic one. And if I go test connection, that's all connected successfully. So that's a working ODBC setup. And really, if you have one already for Crystal Reports, that will cover all of your needs. So I'll just minimize that one now. And what I'll do is I'll just quickly remind you, you're probably already familiar with this, but just on the dashboard, there is the area here which has the SQL overview. So just with this one here, this is the summary version, or you can also have a equals or a question mark and full equals 1, which, as you can see there, that will display the entire SQL data tables. So if there's something specifically that you want to display in your data, you can use the control and find, say, home library selection, or you can find other specific pages. So if you look at the initial part of the data table information, you can see that it's got the pages that it's used on. You can see there that there's the pages it's used on, there's the field names, there's the data type, and there's even a description of what actually exists there. So that's all available for you to use. In regards to that, probably the thing to keep in mind, if you're actually wanting to use multiple tables, which can be a challenge in some applications, just so you're aware, you can use multiple tables in Excel. So with Excel, we'll just move on to an Excel window now. And your version of Excel is probably quite similar to this, but even if it's different, the areas will be essentially the same. So really, for anything related to data, you normally go up on the ribbon to the Data tab. And with ODBC connections, whatever version you have, it will come up here and it will be from other sources. So occasionally that'll have a direct thing to ODBC, or occasionally you'll just have to look into the from Microsoft query for ODBC. So that's dependent on the version that you have, but basically it will take you to the ability to run a query on the database. So just bring that across now. And as you can see there, these ones here are my data sources. So Libero is exactly the same as my Crystal one. I'll choose that. And there you can see there it's brought across all of the different data tables. So if I were to go down here, you can see some of the legacy tables there, some of the newer tables. What I'll do is I'll just bring across one of the most useful tables, one of the things that we often use, which is the stock items. So I'll just bring that one across, and as you can see I expand it, and these are all the details here. So you might want to bring across barcode, I might want to bring across collection, I might want to bring across, just for this example, the probably the title. So I'll just put that one in, and also as a final thing I'll bring in the times issued. So if I was to go next, this will give me the options here just in the query to do some filtering. So this is quite similar to the select expert which you would use in Crystal. So I could say here, this field here may equal a value. So as you can see there, it's very similar to the ones that you're probably familiar with in Crystal. There's the ability to make them null, not null, starts with, end with, and if I was to do that, it will actually go in, and as you can see, it's looking up live barcode data. Or if I was to go on collection, and I would say equals, it will look up the live data. So that's really versatile in that it's actually going through and really connecting to my live data and really actually giving me the ability to filter and do other options in here. So with this one here, I will say that I want my collection to be non-fiction, and I won't put any other options in there, but I can put multiple ones if I want. And I can also do sorting. So in this one I might sort by title and make that ascending. So with this one here, basically you would normally return the data to Microsoft Excel, or you can go back and look at the data directly, which is similar to the browse data function in Crystal, or you could potentially go in and edit the query again. So what I'll do is I'll return this data, and it will come in a default format, sort of a default data formatting. So as you can see, the options here, I can use a table, just a basic data table, or I can go more advanced to a pivot table and other options, but in this one here, I'm just going to go as a table. And as you can see there, this has brought the data, and the default import that it will do is it'll put filtering on there. It will put this basic formatting on here, which is really intended to allow you to distinguish between the different lines. But these ones here, as you can see there, you're not actually locked into that formatting by any means. I can go on here and I can remove that, and I can say, okay, I want this to actually have sort of a basic sort of formatting, and I may want certain colors, and that's really just, I can customize it to whatever I may need with Excel. So with that one there, because this was my initial square that I was on, the row and the column, that's why it's imported at that particular area, but I could have imported it at any area which fitted my needs. So with that one there, I'm going to have a look at a few other examples that I've made of data. And the first one I'll just go on to here and switch windows to a couple of data examples. So with this one here, what I've done is I have made it use the collection description for the data. And I've formatted in a format where this matches what I require in my quarterly reports. So with this one here, this is my actual formatting, and this is my description. This is my actual live data that I have used in this example. And with that, I've put in some basic ability to do some percentage change, some sums. So all of the resources that you have in Excel, you can use with the data that you're exporting. And what I'll also show you just quickly is because this has all of the formatting embedded in, and I'm just gone and potentially just refresh the data, I can go up here and I can put it into a Word document, and here are my pasting options. But basically I can put it into a Word document, and basically I don't have to retype, I don't have to recreate any of those details. I need to have a Word document that could fit the size of my data, but potentially I could use it straight from the Excel. And I have another example here, which is my active members. So this is especially useful when you're getting data which is in your Libero database. So if you're getting data which has something that you can count, like an active member, or which quarter they're active in, then that's quite easy to do that. And that could be 2/3, that could be half of your quarterly reporting, which is something you can have in a document like this. When it comes time, you refresh it, which I'll go in a little bit more detail soon, and that would pick up your live data from your actual database. So that's basically how you can use a table. What I'll have a quick look now is at charts and graphs. And with those there, what you'd normally do is you would start off with the data that you have, and then really you have the ability to use any of these different types that exist. So with this one here, the line graphs can be either with the 2D or 3D, and they're great for showing a trend over time. So with the graphs, I have a couple of examples that I've made. So this one here has a basic graph, and if you look, all this is the data within the table that I got from my ODBC connection, and I've turned this into a graph. So there's line graphs, there's column graphs like this one. So this one helps you see how a parameter changes over time. So this works well if there's a single parameter used. Probably the most important things with using graphs is to choose the one that best represents your data. So you want something that's going to clearly put across what you want to show. So with this one here, I wanted to show the number of members, and these parameters here, I wanted to show them across the passage of time. But if I had additional factors in here, this mightn't be necessarily the best graph to use. Whereas with this one here, I have a quarter here, and these were new members who had joined. So what I'd done is with this one, I had a particular new member status code. So I know how many people were joined up at these different events. So I know in this case that there were 433 new members joined up. And with this graph, what I'm trying to show is I know there's 433. I want to illustrate visually how many joined at each one. So this one here is good for showing the percentage of a whole. This one here, as you can see, that particular event there, the reflections on Newmarket, was especially successful. And some of the other ones may have been a little bit smaller. But this one here can really show me the percentage of a whole. So probably with the graphs and charts, you really have all of the ones that exist within Excel. With the ODBC connection, you're just basically getting the data. But what you may choose to do with the data in the form of a graph, you can use anything that Excel has to offer. And the other thing to remember is if you were to refresh the data, so if I came in and refreshed one of my tables and the data had changed for whatever reason, the graph, because it's actually doing a live check of the data, that would change. So if I change that to 1, that will change that. So it's a live graph which is reflecting the data. So that is basically how you would use Excel's native charts and graphs just with your ODBC data. So Carolyn, do we have anyone in the chat as of yet?
No, we do not.
Okay, so if there are any questions, please put them in there for Carolyn, and she'll be very happy to answer any questions, or I can go over anything that you would like to see specifically. So with this one here, as far as creating additional tables, what you would do is you would select a cell in the list of data you prepared, and with here you would insert a table, and then you would go through the create table dialog box and the wizard there, which would help you create any additional tables. So really the advantage of using the ODBC connection is that basically you get an initial import of data, but the real benefit is the ability to style it however you want to and keep that style, and also the ability to refresh it on demand. So that will be something we will look at in a moment. I'll show you all of the options about refreshing, but really once you have this data in here, you can essentially use any of the tools here. So a lot of these things here you probably used either in Excel training, or there's a lot of online tutorials, and you can go here, you can remove duplicates, you can do data validation, you can do all sorts of different options here, which can be very useful in processing your data. So basically you have whatever tools you may need to use. And if you imported it from the initial query as a pivot table, you have all those additional options. So you can do all sorts of data analysis, you can do all sorts of analyzing the types of titles you have, and using graphs to actually measure their use over time. Basically, this takes out that step of having to constantly export fresh data from Crystal, and basically just brings it straight into Excel so you can use it immediately. So with the refreshing options that I mentioned a moment ago, I'll just quickly display that. I'll just go up here to the example that I had. So with this one here, you normally would go on to data. Whatever version of Excel you're using, you would go up to data, and then you would go up to the refresh options. So at its most basic level, you would just hit the refresh. And you could also go Control Alt and F5, and that will do the same thing. Or you might want to look at some of the other options that exist within the connection properties. So with this one here, you can actually ask it to refresh on a period of time. So you could have it to do live refreshes, say every 5-10 minutes. So this would be especially useful if you were using the cosmic table or something that's changing frequently. Or you could have it to refresh data when opening the file. So that would be especially useful if you were doing a quarterly report. So you could have it, when you opened it up, it would have your fresh data, which you could cut and paste into whatever parts of the quarterly report relied on Libero data. So that could potentially allow you to save a lot of time with your quarterly reports. So those options there pretty much can allow it to refresh on any sort of schedule that you would want, and you can always just go to refresh all, and if anything in the data has changed, that will do a live query back and that will change it. So also, as you can see with the data, this is literally the barcodes and titles of my non-fiction items, but you can see there the actual data itself is essentially in a format that's easy to use. There's no sort of formulas in there, so it's not as though it's doing a reference back. Let's see if I can actually change. And then if I do that, but if I hit refresh, see that will bring back the actual data. So it's actually going back and doing a live refresh of the data. If I wanted to have something that was, say, a more custom version, I could go over here and then I could paste the values, and that would allow me to have something that's standalone and I can do whatever I want. So if I change these ones here to test change, this one here, if I hit refresh, see that will remain, but the ones here will go back because this is a live connection back to the database. So that's basically the refresh options. Do we have any questions as yet?
No, Jeremy, we don't have any questions yet.
Okay, well, if there is anything particularly that you're interested in here that you may find useful, you can always send through an email to support@libero.com.au, and we'd be very happy to help with anything that you have. So even if that is a specific example where you have a format that your council requires, or if you have something where you require a certain type of graph, often what can be done is a template can be built, and then it's got a connection to the data, and then you would go in and then refresh. So what you could potentially do is refresh, and then you could save as, so you have that consistent version. So really it's basically taking out the middleman with Crystal in some ways. if you have something that requires the versatility of Excel for formatting. So really, those are the main things that we wanted to cover today. And if there is anything specific with Excel that you want to use, particularly any real examples that you need in any sort of reporting templates or anything like that, if you would like to either email us through support@libero.com.au, or if you would like to even give us a call, we can certainly help with any sort of formatting and any sort of thing. Because this is a tool that you don't actually require any additional product. This one here, you probably have Excel as part of your basic Microsoft Office. You almost certainly do. And ODBC connections are something that can easily be set up just in your computer. So if you already have a Libero database, you don't require any sort of software. There's no sort of upgrade that's required. This is something you can use right now. This is something that can cut down a lot of the time and effort you're using to get this data from another format and transform it into this format. So you can have it consistent formatting. And the other thing I will mention, which you'll find extremely useful, is if you want to keep the exact formatting, you can use the format painter. So if you have some sort of colors, fonts, or other styles that consistently used, just use it, do it once, and then use the format painter, and you can essentially apply that to anything that you ever require here. So are there any questions on?
No one's asked any questions, Jeremy.
That's okay. So if there's anything else you would like to discuss, don't forget to post on the community forum, or you can also put some comments on the video. So that's about all we have time to cover today, but thank you very much for everyone who's joined us today for this episode. And if there's anything you would like to see on Libero TV, please let us know. Any topic that interests you, anything that you're doing at your library which is interesting, or any person you'd like to see in the industry, please let us know, and we'll make sure that we'll try and schedule it on an upcoming monthly episode. So thank you very much again for joining us, and remember to follow our future shows on the Libero TV page on the website, and you can subscribe to our next episode, which is coming up in July, only a few weeks away now. And thank you very much again, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you.